Yes, that's accurate.
And they can take a look to one of their neighbors to the northeast, up there in Wisconsin, to see what happens when teachers have a choice as to whether or not they would like to donate to the union or not.
Yeah, the recent reforms in Wisconsin and even more recently up in Michigan, I think, are major contributing factors. They're not the only factors, but they're a big part of that membership decline that you've seen at NEA over the past few years. And the Ohio Education Association has seen not as abrupt or dramatic a decline, but the Ohio Education Association is also losing members, partly as a result of the budgets kind of tightening up during the national economic downturn in 2007, 2008. But ultimately, if members can choose whether to pay a union or not, you see in states like Wisconsin and Michigan, a lot of teachers, a lot of other public employees and private industry employees choose not to support the union because they do know what the union spends its money on. The union talks about solidarity and speaking up for the little guy, and yet the bosses of these unions are paid six figures, and in many cases, well more than $100,000 or $150,000, or even two or three times that amount each year in money that members, in many cases, have no choice but to pay.
Jason, would I be wrong to say that in Ohio, for example, that every teacher in a public school is a member of the NEA?
Every teacher. There are a couple big affiliates here in Ohio of the American Federation of Teachers, which is an AFL-CIO affiliate, and is in some ways is a partner of the National Education Association. In some respects is an opponent of NEA when you consider that if a school is unionized by AFT, then those people probably aren't going to be paying dues to NEA. But there are districts that have NEA and OEA affiliates that aren't necessarily forcing those members to pay dues. It's just that in states like Ohio, without a right-to-work law, the union has the option of including what they call a fair share provision in the contract. And the idea is it forces people to pay for the union representation they receive, but ultimately people wind up paying for the representation and also paying for really plush union executive and officer salaries and paying for union spending like the $35 million NEA spent on politics just in the most recent year.
Now, Jason, in Ohio, is a teacher's aide required in those districts where a teacher must contribute? Is a teacher's aide required to contribute as well?
It varies depending on the terms of the local contract, but some of NEA's members are not actually teachers. I know that there are some cases where NEA and its state and local affiliates will unionize support staff, maybe. And a lot of other cases, there are other unions that represent the support staff. AFSCME, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, has a couple of big affiliates here in Ohio and is one of the largest unions in the country, not that far behind NEA when you look at their total membership. But ultimately, where there are public workers and where there is not a right-to-work law in place in a state, you see pretty high unionization rates, and most of that comes from the National Education Association, but AFT and AFSCME are also pretty big, powerful, and again, pretty uniformly left-wing organizations that take a lot of money from a lot of people, and in many cases spend that money in ways their members may or may not agree with.
Getting back to the makeup of the membership in Ohio, because you probably know Ohio better than other states, are there any private schools or parochial schools in Ohio or anywhere in the country, to your knowledge, where the faculty, the teachers, are members of the NEA?
I don't know of any specific instances where there are private or charter schools that have any representation. I do know that in the past couple of years, Ohio's made some serious progress towards school choice. There have been some measures to make money kind of follow the student a lot better than it has historically, and as a result of that, when the money follows the student, then the union also kind of follows the student. As more charter schools are getting funding, the Ohio Education Association has made a concerted effort to kind of target charter schools for unionization. To this point, I don't know how effective those efforts have been. I would imagine in a state with somewhere around 11.5 million people in it, there probably are a couple of charter schools that are unionized in Ohio, and I'm sure that there are instances of it in other states, particularly states with a big presence from NEA or AFT.
Well, I was just trying to...
that the unions are looking at going forward, definitely.
Jason, there's so much more we could talk about, but we are running out of time. Can you tell our listeners how to follow your writings in the last 30 seconds or so before we have to leave you?
Sure thing. You can find my Ohio-specific work at ohiowatchdog.org. Most of my national work focuses on labor issues, and you can find me at watchdog.org. My personal Twitter account is at Jason A. Hart.
Jason Hart, thanks so much for being with us today on Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
JD, that brings us to the end of my return to today's show. It's very great to be with you again as a co-host. Can you make a quick goodbye? And we're going to... Okay, I'm getting the sign from Silent John. I've lost track of time. We're wrapping up. God bless, Godspeed, and may God save the United States of America.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. Huge thanks to our co-hosts, contributors, patrons, callers, and our friends at WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460, where we broadcast live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 to 4 p.m. Look for us on the internet at www.ccrshow.com. Until next time, we are the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.
Just how much of New Jersey is set aside as open space? A whopping 30%. An area roughly the same size as the entire state of Delaware. Yet Trenton politicians are asking to spend billions more of our tax dollars to gobble up even more, shrinking the amount of land available for you to build a home or business. Send a message to Trenton November 4th and vote no on question 2. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity, 2111 Wilson Boulevard, Suite 350, Arlington, Virginia, 22201. This expenditure was not made with cooperation or prior consent of or in consultation with or the request or suggestion of any candidate or person or committee acting on behalf of the candidate. Year after year, your property taxes go up, and politicians tell you they can't afford to give you a break. But now those same politicians want to spend billions of your tax dollars purchasing land, a misguided policy that would actually result in higher property taxes, according to a Rutgers University study. How is that going to help New Jersey families and small businesses? Vote no on question 2 on November 4th. That's no on question 2. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity, 2111 Wilson Boulevard, Suite 350, Arlington, Virginia, 22201. This expenditure was not made with cooperation or prior consent of or in consultation with or the request or suggestion of any candidate or person or committee acting on behalf of the candidate. What's more important to you, fixing our broken pension system or spending billions of tax dollars buying thousands of acres of vacant land? This year, the state failed to make its pension payment. Now, Trenton politicians want us to approve a ballot measure allowing the state to spend billions to buy land for the rest of your lifetime. Send a message on November 4th to put the pension system first. Vote no on question 2. That's no on question 2. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity, 2111 Wilson Boulevard, Suite 350, Arlington, Virginia, 22201. This expenditure was not made with cooperation or prior consent of or in consultation with or the request or suggestion of any candidate or person or committee acting on behalf of the candidate. What's more important, fixing our aging roads and bridges or spending billions of your tax dollars on vacant land? Trenton politicians tell us we don't have enough money to fix our roads, but they want you to let them spend billions on land. Shouldn't that money be going to fix our broken roadways and avoiding a big gas tax hike? Send a message on November 4th. Vote no on question 2. Paid for by Americans for Prosperity, 2111 Wilson Boulevard, Suite 350, Arlington, Virginia, 22201. This expenditure was not made with cooperation or prior consent of or in consultation with or the request or suggestion of any candidate or person or committee acting on behalf of the candidate.